Hi, I'm Roz. I'm going to talk to you today a little bit about mindfulness and anxiety and how some of the techniques can help us to manage anxiety. So obviously in a time of COVID-19 there is a lot of fear around, and I think it's first of all important to acknowledge that that fear is entirely understandable and natural, and that fear is actually a very healthy and important response. It's one of the oldest responses that we have as human beings, and it is nature's protector. So it's entirely natural and understandable. Fear and worry and anxiety are also highly contagious, probably more contagious than the virus itself. And so it's also really important to be aware of how listening to other people worrying can impact on our tendency to feel worried and anxious. But that being said, fear and worry are different to full-blown anxiety. And as those of you who suffer with anxiety will know, it's very much a physical response, a set of physical sensations that happen because our brains release hormones that create varying degrees of the fight, flight or freeze response. So what I'm going to be doing today is just talking you through some of the techniques that can help us to manage more acute waves of anxiety. But the first thing I just wanted to point out is that, as I mentioned in my other talks, mindfulness and short mindful moments throughout the day are a really useful way of maintaining a relatively settled mind, and also of building up our awareness of the ways in which our minds work. Everybody's mind is different. So the more that you pause and just notice where your attention is, maybe what storylines you're telling yourself, and how your body is feeling, the more likely you are to be able to manage your day-to-day fears and worries, and perhaps stop them turning into more acute waves of anxiety. So that's the first thing to bear in mind. Lots of little mindful moments are really, really helpful. The other thing is that if you feel a wave of, acute worry or anxiety coming on, then just to sit and really notice your feet on the ground can be incredibly effective. Lots and lots of studies have shown this. And obviously it's because we are grounding, or we are rooting ourselves. So just consciously choosing to put your feet on the ground and to really notice the feeling of your feet on the ground, and maybe counting to 30, and again continuing to focus on the feeling of your feet on the ground, can be a really useful coping technique. Obviously our feet can't worry, that's why it's so very helpful. Another technique that can be really useful is a short mindful moment where we focus on our breathing. And again, 3 minutes has been shown over and over again to be really, really effective if you feel yourself sort of spinning into a more acute anxiety attack. So obviously when we have anxiety, we are very much in our brains, we are in our minds. And so what we need to do is we need to find practices that bring us back to our bodies. And obviously mindfulness meditation is a great way to do that. So I thought we'd just do a 3-minute sitting together now, where I'll just talk you through what can be useful if you can feel the worry ramping up. So as always, starting by noticing how you are sitting. So and consciously choosing to put your feet on the ground and to sit up reasonably straight, not rigid. One teacher calls it a posture of dignity, which I rather like. So just a comfortable upright posture, noticing your feet on the ground, noticing the feeling of your bottom on the seat, and perhaps the back of your chair touching your back as well. And then if you feel comfortable to shutting your eyes and trying to bring your attention inwards, and starting off by noticing where your thinking is. Okay, so just noticing your thoughts straight away, and maybe just taking a moment to notice the storyline, but not allowing the storyline to continue, just very gently, just saying, oh, noticing, noticing thinking, and then very gently and kindly bringing your awareness back to the sensation of sitting in the seat. And always maybe helpful to have a little thing that you say to yourself. Some people like to say, this too will pass. Maybe say your name to yourself at the end. You can say it out loud or in your head. Or also a more gentle phrase, which I love, is just to say, this belongs. It's okay. Yeah, this thought, this fear, this feeling, it's here. It's okay. And then bringing your attention a little bit more consciously to your breathing, and taking a breath and really noticing the quality of the breath. Again, we're using our breath and our body as our teacher. And if your breath does feel quite kind of high up in your chest, or it feels a little bit, shuddery, an anxious kind of breath, then maybe choosing to breathe a little bit more deeply, trying to feel the breath lower down in your belly. And the more deeply and smoothly we breathe, the better, because the breath is the mind's remote control. It will actually slow down the responses that are going on in the more primitive part of our brain, where the fight, flight, freeze response is. So continuing to focus on the breath as much as possible, and if the mind is still very active, just noticing what it's doing and then coming back to the breath. And when you feel ready, just choosing to really notice the feeling of your feet on the ground again as you open your eyes and come back. Bring your awareness back. So that very short practice is the kind of thing that you can choose to just drop into your day. You can even do it standing up. Outside is lovely. But just consciously choosing to give your mind these opportunities to settle can be really, really helpful. And the last technique I'm going to just mention to you is called the 5-finger technique, and it's really helpful it's really good to do with young people and children, and also for grown-ups. If you're feeling too kind of restless and anxious to really want to sit or stand and breathe, then this is a kind of a bit more of a doing kind of activity, and it very much helps us to get away from our thinking, worrying, anxious mind, and to come back to our bodies. Because it incorporates both a focus on the breathing and also a focus on the sensation of touch. So you have one hand up like this, and then you, with your other hand, you follow each finger up, and as you follow it up, you breathe in, and then as you breathe out, your finger goes down. Breathing in, up the finger and down. And you can also actively create a little pause, as with the breathing, at the top of the finger, just to really slow things down. Okay, so we'll do one round together. It's nice if you want to shut your eyes. So going up my thumb, breathing in, pause a minute, and down my thumb, breathing out. Breathing in as I go up my index finger, pause, and exhale as I go down my index finger. Breathing in as I go up my middle finger, pause, and down my middle finger. Breathing in as I go up my ring finger and down, exhaling. Breathing in as I go up my little finger, pausing and down, exhaling. So doing that a couple of times can be a really helpful way of grounding ourselves. So with all of these techniques, really we're trying to create new habits. And the habit of worrying is very easily formed, and I think a lot of us have that habit of worrying. And what we're trying to do with these little practices is we're trying to create a new habit of giving the mind a chance to settle and of coming out of our thinking mind. Because when you think about it, when we're worried and anxious about things, a lot of the things that we're worried and anxious about, there isn't any clear solution, and so we try and think our way out of them, but obviously it doesn't work. I like the analogy of when you're driving a car and you get stuck in the mud, and each time you rev your engine and the wheels spin round, you're actually going deeper into the mud, and that's a bit like the thinking, the ruminating. So what we're trying to do with mindfulness practices like this is we're trying to move ourselves away from our thinking mind and back into our sensing mind and our bodies. And that's why the activities are all about focusing on the breath and the body, so that we can reduce the activity and the anxiety that's in our brains. So just remembering that each time you do these little practices, you are building up new and more helpful and healthy practices. So I really hope that those have been useful. I'm really grateful to you for watching this, and if you have any feedback or any suggestions on topics that you'd like me to cover, then do please leave them on the Brecon and District Mind Facebook page. Thank you very much.